Good afternoon, everybody. Good morning to those who are in the morning. Good afternoon to those in the afternoon. This is Coach Renz with Deconstructing Christianity. It's been a long time. It's been 2 weeks almost that we haven't been live, and that has been because most of you know my brother and I took a cross-country motorcycle ride, and now that I have returned to my abode, we are back doing our live thing. So we're going to get 5 minutes for people to get on. So I want to appreciate everybody who has been patient, everybody who supported us during the trip, everybody who was like commenting like, hey, you guys having a great time, blah, blah, blah. Saw wonderful. Yay. Wish you stopped through my town. So we had a really good time on our cross-country trip. Just getting things set up here. But I look forward to today's conversation. What's up, Dwayne? So as a reminder, let's get signed up for coming to San Antonio. Let's get to it. Coming to San Antonio, October 31st through November 2nd. Let's also look in the links in the description and sign up for the seminar that we have coming up, the webinar on August 18th. But we are coming back. We are meeting up here in San Antonio. So we're giving about five minutes for people to get on, get started. Hopefully we have some great guests today. We'll see what kind of conversation that we have. But today we're going to talk about a lot. I did a video while I was gone, while I was traveling up to Spokane. I did a video about Sodom and Gomorrah. And then, of course, if you've ever ridden on a motorcycle before in a long distance, then you have plenty of time to think. So, Dwayne, you headed back to North Carolina from Florida. Cool. But you have plenty of time to think when you're riding a motorcycle. So, in all my thinking time, one of the things I was thinking about was the Sodom and Gomorrah. Well, I did the Sodom and Gomorrah video while I was gone. And so I started thinking about the whole thing about Lot. Like, why is Lot even in the Bible? Lot serves no purpose. He's like filler space. And so we want to talk about that into greater detail. Like I said, I'm waiting for the 5-minute mark before I really get into it. We got 2 minutes before we actually get started. So go ahead and share the video to all your friends and family. And of course, subscribe and like the channel. If you're new to this channel, then this is a Christian deconstruction channel. Just let me go on a tangent for a second. If you are a Christian or a Bible believer, stop coming on my page and asking me why I don't talk about Islam, why I don't talk about other religions. The name of the channel is Deconstructing Christianity. I was indoctrinated into Christianity. That's a dumb question. And then here's another thing. Guy asked this question yesterday. He started asking, what do I believe? Because I was saying that his God is not real. What does it matter? I was asking him to prove that his God, I asked him to prove his God exists. And then he asked me, what do I believe? What does that have to do with your God existence? Whatever I think has nothing to do with the proof of your God. You see the scam there that they're trying to get you to say that, well, I follow the science of this or the science of that or some other type of spirituality, and then they want to debunk what you just said instead of actually proving their deity. And that's why I told dude, no, what I think, what I believe, I don't believe shit, but what I know doesn't matter to the proof of the belief of your God. It doesn't. Oh shit. Dwayne, I'm glad you said that. I forgot to load. So Dwayne was on YouTube saying that there was a great video that I loaded earlier today called Selling Your Soul to the Devil. I forgot to load it on the TikTok, but I'll load that one on TikTok after this video, after this live. But yeah, they asking me that question is redundant. It's over and over again, and it doesn't matter. It really doesn't matter. It doesn't matter what I think. If the thing is you got to prove your God, then just prove your God. But today we're about to talk about and prove and demonstrate how stupid this story is. I got to get my cigar lit. TikTok's gonna put the restrictions on me. But all right. All right. All is right with the world. When we're talking live and I got a cigar and some good old coffee next to me. And like I said, hopefully we have some great conversation today. I know I've been gone for almost 2 weeks. Almost 2 weeks, but hey, went to go see my son and just wasn't an opportunity to do live videos while I was gone myself. There's the restriction from TikTok. Because now I gotta tell y'all, there's some things before I get into this Lot thing, because I don't know if it's worthy of a full video, but just one of the things that I recognize just by being out there, you know how Christians like to say that nature is proof of God? Nature is proof. Well, nature did some proving while I was out there. So when you're riding a motorcycle through mainly in Wyoming, Montana, you see the rippling effects of the land based on the last glacial period that covered North America, which would have been the Younger Dryas. And the rippling of the land, people tried to say, oh, that's proof of the flood, proof of the flood. But the flood would not have done that because the depth of it would have been too deep. But it wouldn't have done that. It wouldn't have happened by the flood the way it happened. But because it's Glacial National Park, you can see this rippling effect of the glacier, which demonstrates that the glacier was there around 12,000 BCE, 15,000 BCE. And if the glacier was there in 15,000 BCE, but according to the Bible, the world wasn't created until about 4,700 BCE, then the Bible is wrong, right? I mean, am I crazy for that one? But the Bible is wrong. Yes, but so the next time somebody says to you that nature is proof of God, just point them to Glacial National Park, the land surrounding it in Wyoming and Montana. And since the glacier was there way before the Bible says the life that Genesis was created, then yeah, nature also proves the God of the Bible is unreal. But if you haven't driven through Wyoming, man, I gotta tell you, it's beautiful country, especially in northern Wyoming, up near Sheridan. Shit, I thought I was in Ireland. Beautiful green mountains, pine trees and shit, and rolling hills and valleys. Western Montana, beautiful. Idaho, y'all, you gotta ride through the panhandle. You gotta ride through the panhandle of Idaho. God damn, beautiful mountains, valleys, pine-covered mountains. It's just a beautiful landscape. So it was a great ride. So I had a great time. Great time. So today we're talking about this Lot dude. I mean, right off the bat, many people don't even consider or think about Lot. They only think about the Sodom and Gomorrah story. Lot's wife turning his back, turning around, and she turned into a pillar of salt. But have you ever really considered Lot? Why is Lot even in the Bible? What purpose does he serve, other than a cautionary tale, perhaps? But beyond that, Lot actually presents a situation that creates, I don't know if I want to call it a contradiction in the Bible, but definitely the people going against what this God said and this God going against what he said at a certain point with Lot. If Lot wasn't in the story, it wouldn't be a problem. But he put Lot in the story. I'll get to the part where it doesn't make sense for Lot to be in the story, right? But first, I got to give you the story. For those who don't know, Lot is Abraham's nephew. And when Abraham left, well, Lot was Abraham's nephew. Lot's father's name was Haran. When Abraham left because God had called him and he went out to Canaan, his nephew Lot went with him. Lot and Abraham acquire workers and slaves, and they acquire a bunch of sheep, but the land that they was on was not big enough to hold all the Lot and all that Lot had accumulated and all that Abraham had accumulated. So Abraham gives him a choice to say, look here, dude, pick whatever land you want and you can have it. I'll go to the other side. Lot looks over there near Sodom and like, the grass is greener. I'm going over there. So Lot goes over there. No big deal. But then Lot gets captured by the people of Sodom. And then Abraham has to build up an army or take his men, and they go and they defeat the people. And after they defeat the people, Lot is freed from, and it's weird though. Lots get captured. I mean, correct me if I'm wrong. Lots get captured by people of Sodom, but then after Abraham goes and whoop the people of Sodom's ass, Lot then goes and lives in the city of Sodom after that. Can anybody make that make any sense? Am I thinking about that wrong? I mean, he didn't get captured by the people of Gomorrah. He didn't get captured by the people of Zoar. He got captured by the people of Sodom. Abraham puts together about 80 dudes. They go beat their assets. Then Lot is released, and Lot goes and lives in the city of the people that had just captured him. I'm gonna tell you, Lot is only in this story so that the story can happen. What is the purpose of him going? So he goes to the city. All right, he's in the city. And then Abraham has his whole big deal about, oh, don't destroy the city of Sodom and Gomorrah, God. Why are they doing something? They're crying out. All right, the people who are crying out is Lot and Lot's workers. Because according to, as far as we know, the only Israelites, the only people who would be under the Abrahamic covenant, because they weren't calling themselves Israelite at this time frame, would have been Lot and his workers, because they all had to get circumcised and everything. So the only crying out would have been Lot and his people. And as I did in the video about Sodom and Gomorrah, what we do understand based on that story is the fact that the crying out wasn't because of some type of homosexuality that most of the evangelicals try to utilize this story to make it mean that, but it was because the people of Sodom were not cordial to the Israelites. They didn't give them land. They didn't give them the same protection under the law. They didn't give them their money. They didn't share their resources. So this Lot guy and the rest of his crew are crying out, and this is the great crying out that this God is saying that he has to go and investigate to see if they have committed this crime. But he also says that if there are 10 people in the city, well, we know that Lot had a crew larger than 10. And if he is coming there because of their crying out, should that not have been 10 righteous people, unless you throw in your own idea that, oh, he was talking specifically about 10 righteous Sodomite people. But Lot and his crew was living in the city. And how bad can the Sodomite people have been if Lot was prepared to marry off his 2 virgin daughters to 2 Sodomites? I mean, we do have that in the story where Lot is marrying off 2 of his daughters to Sodomites, but these people are so evil, but Lot is righteous enough to be saved, that this God makes an extra effort to save Lot and his family. And this God was willing to save Lot, his 2 daughters, his wife, and the 2 dudes that were going to marry his 2 daughters. So I think there were some righteous people in Sodom. Plus, if you go back and look at Melchizedek, who had Cain, it is through most scholars think that Melchizedek is the king, who they say was the king of Salem, was the son of the king of Sodom. and that Salem wasn't reference to Jerusalem, but Salem is a reference to Sodom. And when that's why Abraham not only gave him 10%, but he gave him everything that he had gotten from his battle with the Sodomites, because he was giving it back to the son of the king that he had just killed, who was the king of Sodom. So Melchizedek would have most likely still been the king of Sodom at the time frame. And we got to do a little bit more research on this, but at the time frame that Sodom and Gomorrah was destroyed. I'm gonna do some more research on that. I gotta do some more research on that. That just sent my brain in a little tizzy there, because I just thought about that. If scholars are saying that Melchizedek is the son of the king of Sodom, Melchizedek, then that would make him king at the time frame that Sodom and Gomorrah were destroyed. We gotta research that one. We gonna have to research that one. So anyway, why is Lot in this story? If the Sodomites had been, I mean, I guess he's got to be there so that the story can happen. There has to be somebody to cry out. So I guess Lot has to be there just to do the crying out that this guy wanted to destroy Sodom and Gomorrah. But there didn't need to be a crying out when he just killed for no reason. He said, was a wicked dude. I'm just going to kill But you just killed him anyway. You killed Onan because he was jizzing on the floor. He had that pull-out game. You killed Onan. You don't need, this guy has demonstrated he doesn't need a reason. He doesn't need a calling out or crying out. Right? So then Lot is saved. You know, and let's think about it. Lot is righteousness. Lot is righteous enough to be saved. So let's look at the character of this righteous man who is able to be saved from the destruction of Sodom and Gomorrah. 2 supposedly angels come into the city. They were going to sleep outside. He invites them to his house. Well, that's very neighborly. The city townsfolk said that these dudes didn't come and show proper respect, so we want you to send them outside so we can shakalaka bang these dudes. And yeah, can't shakalaka boom boom. That's with the women. Shakalaka bang. He's doing that to the dude. So they want to do that. This righteous man named Lot, who, of course, as I did in the video yesterday about how the Bible does not champion women, I should have added this part in there as well. This good dude Lot, who is worth saving, says that he was willing to sacrifice his 2 virgin daughters to the essaying of these men so that they don't essay the angels. Now, the angels don't allow it and they blind the men. Why didn't they do that in the first place? Why didn't they just, when they first tried to accost them, why didn't they just blind them in the first place? Why you got to wait and let Lot demonstrate that he's willing to sacrifice his virgin daughters to the mob in order to save these angels? I mean, it sounds a lot like this guy telling Abraham, I want you to kill your son Isaac. And then at the last minute, I'm sending you a ram in the bush. So I'm gonna let these men beat down at your door, press hard up against you, according is how it says it, because they were going to beat the hell out of Lot too and rape him. But then we're gonna wait for you to offer your daughters, let them deny it, and then we're gonna blind everybody. You see what I'm saying? You see how stupid? It's like we're going to rewrite some of the same elements that happened in the Abraham with the sacrifices of Isaac story. And then we're also going to flip it over here. And I want you to, we're going to see if you're going to allow for your daughters to be raped, even though the angels could just blind those men. I mean, hell, if they can bring down fire and brimstone and destroy the whole city, certainly they did not need Lot's protection. But it was almost like a test. Well, Lot had to be there so that the story can happen as well. And I'm gonna tell you one of the main stories that can happen. So Lot, him and his daughters, they leave, and his wife, they leave. The son-in-law, the future son-in-law is like, hell no, we ain't going nowhere. So they leave. After bargaining, because they were told to go one distance, but Lot's like, dude, I'm old, I can't go that far. So they say, okay, just go to Zohar and you'll be all right. Which if they could have went to Zohar and been all right, then why tell them to go to the other faraway city? Just tell them to go to the first place that they can get to. Makes no sense. So they get to the first place, they get to the caves near Zohar. The wife turns and looks back long before then. She turns into a pillar of salt. And of course, there are two different landmarks that are proclaiming to be Lot's wife. One I think is in Jordan and one is in Syria or something like that. Or it's like one is in Israel and one is in Syria and one is, but it's in two different places. It's just pareidolia, rocks that look like something and people making it out to be something that it's not. But Lot gets into the cave with his daughters. Most of y'all know what happened next in the cave. Lot's daughter said, there are no men left in the world. And our father, we have to get our father drunk and essay our father. So they get their father drunk. And the oldest daughter, she takes advantage of a drunk old man. I'm sorry, but even if I was drunk, there is absolutely no way I would allow my daughters to take advantage of that. That's just not happening. And this is the righteous man that was worth saving. But after the first night, and she got pregnant. Right then, got pregnant. Virgin, first time getting it, she got pregnant. I tell you, them dudes and women in the Bible, they are fertile as hell, because the first time they do the shakalaka boom boom, they seem to get pregnant. Like, I'm glad I wasn't in biblical time. I'd be scared to have sex. Like, pregnant. God dang. I'd just be like, nah, I'm not doing it. But then, so you would think, if this is such an important thing, that the next day when they getting him drunk again, that he wouldn't be like, what the hell y'all doing? You know, because there's no way he would have known that she was pregnant, that the older daughter was pregnant that day. He would not have known that. It's an impossibility for them to have known it immediately. But you getting him drunk again. You got a second daughter. You know the first daughter took your ping ping. You go ahead and get drunk anyway? I mean, I understand you're mourning your wife because she turned into a pillar of salt, according to the story. But you get drunk again. Then your second daughter, she takes advantage of you. She gets pregnant. Lot got even drunk. Lot got that super juice. Got the super juice even when he's drunk. So Lot is drunk, gets her pregnant. They have two children, Moab and Ammon. They are supposedly the progenitors of the Moabites and the progenitor of the Ammonites. Now, here's a problem. When we get to Exodus story, within the Exodus story, it talks about the fact that you will not go to war and you will not make enemies of the Moabites and the Ammonites. But then when you get to places like Judges, they get into wars and battles with the Moabites and the Ammonites. When it comes to Psalms with the king, according to the story with King David, he supposedly kills all the Moabites. You got this contention back, and you got God telling them, do not fight the Ammonites and the Moabites because they are your cousins. It also, in that same verse in Deuteronomy, tells them, there's a verse in Deuteronomy that tells them, do not fight the Edomites because those are your brothers. So for all the Power Rangers out there, Hebrew Israelites, and they up there screaming and yelling about the Edomites, the Bible tells you that the Edomites are your brothers and you should not fight them. But the Ammonites and the Moabites are your cousins and you shouldn't fight them. But yet they fight them back and forth. There's some good times they have with them. Ruth is a Moabite. Ruth then pimps herself to Boaz, and through that line, you get Jesus. So Jesus got a little Moabite in him. If he had any Joseph in him, he would have some Moabite in him. But since he supposedly don't have any Joseph in him, he doesn't have any Moabite in him. But his lineage is being claimed in Matthew and Luke that he got some Moabite in him because he got Ruth in there. But of course, they're not supposed to marry outside of their ethnic group, though. They're not outside of their tribe, but they constantly do anyway. Right? At least the men do. The men do it, and it's okay for the men to do it. The only time a woman did it that was okay was what's that woman name? One Night with the King. Esther. Esther was the only one. Only one I can think of right now. All the rest of them women, them Hebrew women couldn't marry outside. They did, they lose all their inheritance. When you did have somebody marry outside, you had like people, then they gonna name it Jezebel. They're gonna talk about Jezebel and all that. But the Lot purposes in the Bible is just so that the story can happen, right? He serves no other purpose. He's not a righteous dude. He's willing to give up his daughters for slavery. I mean, to some dudes to essay them, so that some angels who are powerful. Why would anybody think they have to protect an angel? That has always bothered me about the Lot story. That's one of the, well, there's a lot that bothers me about the Lot story, but one of the things that bothers me about the Lot story is you got two angels. They just came down from heaven. They're supposed to be close to God. They're supposed to have powers. And you need Lot to protect you. It doesn't make any sense to me. Just like it doesn't make any sense that them two girls thought that the whole world was destroyed and that they was not going to be able to find a man. So the best thing they could do was have sex with their daddy. And the fact that this man was able to get drunk first night, even though I don't let it slide, is terrible. But you do it again the second night, that's one of them jokers who've been secretly wanting to take his daughter's pum pum. That's how I see it. I don't know why the Bible think that Lot was worthy enough to be saved from the city of Sodom and Gomorrah, but he's not worthy enough to be saved from the city of Sodom and Gomorrah, because this man probably been looking at his daughters as they grow up, looking all like a molester. Because he sure didn't do anything to stop his daughters from taking his ping ping. I've been drunk once in my life, and I was still aware of what was going on. And they told me I almost had alcohol poison. So, no. I ain't buying it that it happened twice. Not buying it at all. Not buying it at all. But could somebody help me with the thought process, though? And the other reason that the Lot story don't make sense, and it shouldn't even be in the Bible, is what I said earlier. Lot decided to go live near Sodom and Gomorrah. He was then captured by the Sodomites. After he was freed, he went to go live in the city again. In the city. Now, first he was living outside the city, near the city, had a whole bunch of animals and everything. What happened so he got captured, okay? Him and his people, his workers, they get captured. They lose all their animals, got it. Abraham comes and saves them, okay. Instead of staying with Abraham and rebuilding his wealth, he goes and lives in the city that just had the people that conquered him. Make that make sense to me. He said the cigar looks better today. This is a 60 ring gauge. My wife accidentally picked the bigger ring gauge of these. I actually like the smaller ring gauges. But I need that part to make some. I mean, when the first part don't make sense, then how's the rest of it ain't gonna make no damn sense. Well, now if I remember correctly, Isaac is saying that his daughter should have actually stayed in the city with their husbands. What happened to leave your parents and cleave to your husband? They weren't yet married. They hadn't quite gotten married yet. But remember, they were still virgins. So, Marriage is when you do the shakalaka boom boom. Marriage ain't got shit to do with a piece of paper. So they weren't quite married yet, so they were still the property of their husband. Even when they were betrothed back in the day, they had to go through processes first before the actual marriage ceremony. I agree, Randall. They say alcohol is liquid courage. If Lot let his daughter essay him, he desired it. Yeah, that's the only way. That's the only way. Yep. Around 54 ring gauge to 52, that's my sweet spot. It's 60. I mean, still, normally 60s, you don't get a good profile out of it. But I'll give this Brasilia, this Bahia, this Bahia Brazilian wrapper. It's got a Brasilia San Andreas wrapper. And it's still got a good profile, even at a 60 ring gauge. Papa Lance. But now we're not gonna blame this on alcohol. Yeah, cafe. Tell me that you don't know nothing about cigars by telling me that you don't know nothing about cigars. You know, I understand. People come on here, they're new. Good God. Who was I talking to? I was talking to somebody on this trip. Damn, I was talking to somebody on this damn trip. And I was talking to them about the fact that the one thing that sometimes made me want to stop doing this is the repeated statements and questions. And I have to go back and say, people are new. Some people are new. Coffee is probably new. He's probably never heard me explain that cigars you don't inhale. So you don't get cancer with cigars. You got a 0.01% chance of possibly getting some form of mouth cancer, but that's it. So don't make statements about products you don't really know about yet. Learn about it first. If I was smoking a cigarette, you'd be on it, coffee, but I'm not. But I say that because this other gentleman, not coffee, he just brought it back. People keep asking the same damn question. And I really wish Christians get a new line of rhetoric. You know what I mean? Like, can we get a new line of rhetoric from Christian? I know I'm going on a tangent here, but and I know I said it in the early parts, but some of y'all wasn't here. You know, I'm always getting this argument. Oh, if you're not Christian now and you say that you used to be Christian, then you never was a Christian. You have no idea. No idea, right? Coffee. I need you to learn, bruh. I need you to learn. I need you to learn. Cigars are all natural. The reason why that happens with cigarettes is because the 120 to 450 chemicals that they put in the cigarette is not actually the tobacco that creates the cancer. It is the chemicals that they put in the cigarettes that creates it. It's kind of like your ganja. If your ganja is all natural, you're good to go. But when they put some chemicals in it, that's when they mess it up. Don't be those people who just make statements. I know you're smarter than that. No, you don't inhale cigars. If you inhale cigars, you're crazy as hell. Look, okay. We turn this into a cigar commentary. What method do you use to get the taste out of your mouth? Mouthwash don't work. I just brush my teeth. I use charcoal toothpaste, and you know that what's the mouthwash? What is it? Orange, the orange one. That's like medicine. I use that one. But let's get back to the subject. All right, come on. Isaac gonna keep us straight. I heard what you said about lost daughters not truly being married, partly because they were virgins, but Mary was a virgin. Yet she left her father and mother's house. This is true. Do you think this indicates that early followers of Jesus and Joseph indicates the early followers of Jesus, that Joseph was his, oh, that Joseph was his father? Mm, that is true. Mary did go ahead and leave, had already left before the ceremony, and she supposedly was a virgin, but she was already pregnant. But so I don't think that's a good point. Now we are talking about uh, how many years would it have been? We are talking about 2,000, no, a 2,000 year time difference between the era of Lot and the time frame of Mary and Joseph. So of course we can have some different cultural things happening and changing by that time frame, but it still makes a good point. Yeah. But every story back in the time frames of Lot and Abraham, daughters didn't leave their mother and father until they had the wedding ceremony. It is interesting that by the time we get to the Joseph Mary story, Mary has already left with her father, with her soon-to-be husband, but yet is still claimed to be a virgin. And of course, there are those who don't think that she was a virgin anyway, that she was, she had took somebody's ping ping because Joseph was going to put her away. Let's see. We're gonna stay with the subject matter though. For cigar information, I have a whole nother channel called Smoking Phoenix Cigars. There I go. Do you think the earliest followers of Jesus thought Joseph was his father, not God? Actually, I do. I think the idea that Jesus becoming God was something that was a later creation. That this is why the fight it took 300 years for them to solidify the Trinity. So I think that most people recognize him as being Joseph's actual son, because the only way he could have been a Messiah or considered a Messiah is that it had to come from the line of David. Now you do have it where it can come from the line of David, and all, but although I have to research it again, there is somebody in Joseph's line that was removed from the monarchy who can never have a king in his line, which may have invalidated it. But and that may just be in one of the in Luke or Matthew's versions, not in both, because of course there are some differences between the two. But the early followers would have been more inclined to follow the Jesus character if they believed he was from the line of David, which is why Matthew and Luke had to make him from the line of David. He then becomes legendized and then deified over the centuries. I thought coffee was all right. I try to be nice to him and everything. So one thing that you don't know is that having the darkness around my eyes is a normal thing, a genetic trait from every goddamn male in my father's side of the family. So you might want to ask some questions before you come out and make personal attacks or personal statements about someone without asking questions and knowing anything about them. Right? I was being kind to you and trying to educate you about cigars, and not saying that you making a stupid ass comment about cigars because you're ignorant as hell. But now you want to make some personal attacks because your ego got a little bruised because you can't take kind criticism from someone. And if you're talking about the darkness, I like my chocolate, even though I got tanned and every goddamn thing from riding that bike for 10 days in the sun, and I'm loving it. And I have no problem with the darkness around my eyes, because it just lets me know that's from my father, that I am my father's son, because he had it, my uncle had it, his daddy had it. So if you think that you've hurt my little feelings because your feelings got hurt, you need to go on somewhere. Try to see, you just can't be nice to everybody, y'all. You be nice to people. You try to like politely give them some correct information about, and we wasn't even talking about cigars. This conversation is not, my cigar has nothing to do with what we're talking about, but you got to make your little comments about it. And then I politely correct you, educate you. And you still got to be stuck on stupid. I tell you that mouth cancer is a 0.1% chance with cigar smokers. Explain about the chemicals, but you still got to come back. Well, you still inhale it in your mouth to do this, and then because you can't still really say nothing, then you got to, well, you look at it, you think black don't crack, you're invincible, and look at the ring under your eyes. You can find a childhood picture of me before I even puffed the cigar and see the rings. Oh, you know, this is why I tell y'all I don't like humans sometimes. I would like you as an individual. Certain people, some of y'all, I probably like you as an individual person. But people in general sucks. Because people in general are stupid. And this is why they believe in this Bible. See, I'm bringing it back. This is why they believe in this Bible. Because they're too stupid to think for themselves and critically think and then accept actual information. And so they easily jump on and follow this book, follow this belief out of the fear, but also out of the sheepish mentality. Who could read this book and look at the story of Lot and say that Lot is a good enough dude to be saved? A dude who would sell off his daughters to an angry mom to protect some angels, that's a good dude? Yet the grandmother who's in Tibet right now, who's a Buddhist, but she's a sweet little old lady and she got a sweet little old husband. They've been good community people, but they get to go to hell. But Lot, now he's a good dude. He's a good dude, having incest with his daughters, and then you got to protect the generations of his daughters first. Well, you say so in Exodus. Don't have a war with the Ammonites and the Moabites because they come from that incestuous relationship. They're your cousins. But then later on, you allow your people to go and kill them. You see what I'm saying? It's stupid. The story makes no sense. When you critically think through the story, you have to walk away thinking that obviously people are trying to build on a story. Obviously, people are copying other versions of this story, because we know that Judges 19 is like Lot's story was the rated R version. No, the PG-13 version. And then Judges 19 was the rated R version of the same damn story. So we know they're just building on the same story, retelling the same story, legendizing the same stories, and yet people want to claim that this is the word of God. And people want to believe it. No way can. He said what's crazy, the God forbids incest, but this Messiah is a product of incest. Because the God is the Father and He's the Son. Did you see that movie by Carson Pearson on Netflix? Yeah, some years ago. Unless they've done a new one, but I do remember the one from years ago that I saw, his whole struggle of walking away from the Kojic. And I remember seeing that, and I almost liked Carson Pearson after that, but then he went to like a pseudo version of Christianity anyway. So it's like, it amazes me when people walk away from a certain part of the organization, but then they still want to maintain the religion itself. And they know that if they just, if I would have come out and I was doing, hey, the Bible, deconstructing the Bible, but reconstructing true followers of Jesus, and I can point out some of these jacked up things like Lot, but then how Jesus, we under the new covenant and the blood and all the old things have passed, and we are still to keep the law, but we only have to keep certain ones. And I could build a whole organization. Those kind of people kind of sickening me. It's like, pick a lane, right? Pick a lane. Don't try to Martin Luther this thing. Don't try to reform the church. You know the whole thing is rotten to the core. Tear the whole damn thing down, and then recognize what's real, right? Imagine if Martin Luther had just said, nah, the whole organization of the church is wrong. Matter of fact, it's so goddamn wrong that even these writings are corrupted writings. They're created by man. The canonization of the Bible has nothing to do with divine inspiration. It had more to do with power structure of creating the organization that would run religion throughout Rome. Imagine if he had done that. Imagine if that was done instead of the bullshit of, I just want to reorganize it because the rich people are getting to pay for their sins by giving some money to the church, and then they can go and, molest people. No. We wouldn't have the bullshit. We may not have the bullshit that we got today if that was done. And you're right, Isaac. This guy could have created Jesus out of the dust. Why did he have to come through blood? Why did he have to come through the incest? And why did he have to be the son of this God? Unless that was just the popular motif of the people of that day. Whether we're talking about the Greeks, we're talking about Romans, we're talking about anybody in the Levant. God's having sex with women and having a demigod son had been a popular motif for over 3,000 years. And so that was what it was going to be. Is there actually a council consisting of only Afro-American bishops? Actually, I have no idea. That would be new to me. If it is, it's a waste of time. I'm pretty sure that there's some types of councils. I mean, it depends on what level of councils you're talking about. I mean, there were some all-black preacher organizations in the city I grew up in Atlanta. But I don't think that's what you mean by that. But yeah, this whole story, if you think about it, why Lot doesn't serve a purpose other than so that maybe Ruth, that they had to go through all of that so Ruth could be in the placement that she could be in, so that she can pimp herself, to Boaz as a sugar daddy. I forgot what you call the woman in that situation. My man Rupert. Rupert said that the church is wrong, but the word is correct. That's why Christ said to do as they say, not as they do, because they do not follow the word. Now, that is a correct statement, Rupert, as far as saying that the church is wrong in the fact that they don't follow the actual word by which they are claiming to be the word of this God and the teachings of this Jesus. But neither does anybody else, Rupert, who believes in this. I want you to think, Rupert, I want you to think about what you just said. Now, Rupert, you're saying this, not me. This is what your words. This is your words. All right. So y'all just listen to what I'm saying, Rupert. You're saying that the church is wrong, but the word is correct. That's why Christ said to do as they say, not as they do. So what were they telling the people to do when Jesus said this to them? He said that they stand on the altar of Moses. He was teaching, telling the people that they need to follow the Mosaic laws. The Mosaic laws consist of about 613 laws. So, Rupert, if you are to do as they had, as the word says, and the word that they were saying was that you have to follow the law, are you doing animal sacrifices for repentance of your sins? When you have a child and do you sacrifice 2 pigeons? When a woman is on her menstrual cycle, do you avoid touching her or touching anything that she has touched and that she is considered unclean? Do you keep the festival of weeks or any of the other festivals that you're supposed to keep? So when you say that that the word and that what they are not following is the word that Jesus said, are you following that? You following that law? Inquiring minds want to know. And as far as that word being infallible, it has so many contradictions in it. Now, I don't know, Rupert, if you want to express yourself verbally or not. But it's about that time I put on YouTube and Facebook. We put the link up, and I don't know why that popped up. And we put the link up to invite people on. I just got shit popping up on my screen that I ain't even click on. I saw that. Yeah, that's the one that I saw. And I saw the dude dressed up like a car. I actually did video back then when that first came out, Randall. I did videos about it. So if you were to search my name, like at Coach Rand, what are you on Facebook? If you go to YouTube, it'd be easier to do it. On YouTube and do at Coach Rand's 33 and then search Carson Pearson, you'll see the videos that I did on him back then. Isaac, are you talking to me or are you talking to Rupert in that statement? I got an idea who you're talking about, but I figured you're talking about him, but I just making sure. For those on TikTok who don't know, I am also streaming on Facebook and YouTube. If you would like to be a commenter on the show, that's where you want to go, Facebook or YouTube, if you want to comment on the show. I don't know why I got this thing up where it allows for it. It automatically pops up with the grid. I didn't particularly want the grid. Yep, you're right, Brian. If he's burning animals without a permit, he's going to jail, not heaven. I figured that's who you was talking to, Isaac. And here's the thing. It's interesting. So I used to be, I used to deal with this young lady who's practiced EFA. And yeah, the gentleman that she would go and get her sacrificial animals from, they had to do it on a sneaky sneak because sacrificing animals is illegal. Adam lived for several hundred years. Okay. I didn't see that. Hold on. Numbers then says that God doesn't lie, doesn't change his mind, and always bring his words to pass. Yet scripture shows itself otherwise. He told Adam that he would die the same day that he ate the fruit, yet Adam lived for hundreds of years. Exactly. And now, does it have your name up there? Ike. Yeah, it does. Ike. What's interesting about that, Ike, is that the counter that Christians will make or Bible believers will make to that is that because First Peter, which is not written actually by Paul, but when First Peter says that one day into God is is like 1,000 years to man, and they would try to say that well, since he died before 1,000 years, then it was one of God's days. Yet the word that was used in Genesis is yom, which means a 24-hour day. But also, First Peter was just one not written by Paul. We don't know who that was written by. It was a later gospel that was most likely at the end of the first century or beginning of the second century that it was written. So it has truly no authority to say what any of those things were, and you can't prove it. You would have to first be able to prove that God exists in order to prove that one day to God is 1,000 years to man, because that is giving a definition of this God. Okay, Rupert, this doesn't make sense. This doesn't make sense. Those laws that you mentioned are no longer needed, only the commandments. Christ came and did away with those laws. Where did this Jesus claim that you don't have to follow the law? Because he claimed that he told them that they have to follow the law. So where did he say you ain't got to follow the law anymore? Because what you're talking about is doctrine, not what your Bible says. So tell us where that's at, Rupert, that you don't have to follow the law. He said there's several prophecies that didn't materialize. For example, Ezekiel 26 predicted Nebuchadnezzar would completely destroy Tyre, and he didn't destroy Tyre. Yeah, they they try to say that if the city was would be attacked or whatever later on, but it talks about how the city of Tyre was going to be completely destroyed, the land was going to be jacked up, and it didn't happen. And Brian is right. Just holding two conversations at the same time. Christ supposedly came to fulfill the laws, not to do away with them. Read the damn book, then come try. And that's the thing that they don't like, because he's saying that I come to fulfill the law. When you fulfill something, you in this instance, because it's following a process, then you would come and fulfill it by following the process, being a demonstration of how to follow this process. Even though Zechariah was claimed to be a righteous man in the contemporary time frame, and he was following the law, it doesn't mean he didn't sin. It just meant that when he would follow the law, if he did sin, he would go and kill some animals. He would do his civic duties to this God. So it demonstrates that. So when this Jesus is claiming that he came to fulfill the law as a demonstration for the perfection of man in the law, it didn't mean that I come to take away the law. This is why he told them to do what the Pharisees say to do. If he came to break the fucking law, why would he tell them that they need to do what the Pharisees say? It would have made more sense if he came to make a change to say that you don't have to worry about what the Pharisees say, nor what the Pharisees do. But I'm going to give you a true understanding of walking in the will of God is. You're not going to have to say, well, he didn't say you're not going to ever have to sacrifice animals anymore. You're not going to have to worry about Passover. You ain't got to do the Festival of Weeks or any other festival. You ain't even got to worry about the year of Jubilee, because every day going to be Jubilee up in his piece. He could have came and told them, but he never did. He never made mention that you ain't got to follow the law anymore. That's Paul. Paul is the one that is telling you that it's about just believing in Jesus. Paul is the one that is telling you that you ain't got to follow the law. And the only reason Paul is doing this is because his audience are Greeks and Romans and other people within the Roman Empire who would not even consider following the lowly religion of the Jewish people, because to those people, the Jewish people were some of the lowest people in society, and they were not going to follow that. So it was Paul. So Rupert, your ideas is from Paul. Your Jesus character said otherwise. This is why I did you not watch the video that I did where I talked about how Paul and Jesus contradict each other? Or rather, Paul is contradicting Jesus. Oh, hey, Peaceful Storm. I'm a believer and appreciate your research. Well, thank you. Well, thank you. Oh, thank you for the rose. Is it Sherry? Thank you. Appreciate that. Thank you very much. Right. The city of Tyre is still in existence today, even after Israel bombed it. They try to say the same thing about when they bombed Damascus. Like, yeah, but they still there. Oh, it's in ruins, and the Bible predicted it. No, it's not in ruins. You blew up a couple of buildings. You blew up a couple of buildings. I drove through some country ass towns between San Antonio and Spokane. I saw some towns in ruin. I went through some towns where them town was it wasn't nothing there. Okay, let's see what Peaceful Storm has to say here. Just for clarification on the scriptures. Jesus said, if you love God, love your neighbor as you love yourself, you will have fulfilled all the laws and the prophets. This is true, Peaceful Storm. So let's think about what you just said. Now, most people like to focus on love your neighbor as yourself and you will fulfill the law. But he said, if you love God. Now, when you look at the Old Testament, how do you demonstrate your love for this God? Right? Yeah, and thank you for the caps. We don't do all caps here, but thank you for recognizing it. But Peaceful Storm, how do you demonstrate based on him saying, follow, you need to do what the Pharisees tell you to do, but don't live like them. Loving this God is to do what? How does this God demonstrate that you have to love this God? Through obedience. Thank you. Through obedience. Now, how do you demonstrate the obedience to this God? Because we have many examples in the Old Testament where this God sent the people into slavery or had them conquered and all sorts of other things because they were disobedient. So how do you show obedience to this God? Through the law, right? Through the law. And the law says that you have to do what if a woman is on her monthly cycle? Or in this case, you can't do. If a woman's on her monthly cycle, what are you supposed to observe? I'm just throwing an easy one out there. I'm gonna keep the harsh ones in the bag for a second. Right? She can't come into the temple and no sex. So if you love God, and also remember, you can't touch nothing that she sat on or anything like that either. So if Jesus is saying that you are following the law, you fulfill the law when you love God, and a woman is on her cycle, should she be able to go to church? Should her husband have sex with her? Should her husband sit on the same couch? It ain't got to be a husband. Should a man or anyone else sit on the same couch? All right, correct. I'm not sure if you meant correct to what I was just saying, but if you are loving this God, when a woman is on her cycle, she should not be going to church. Nobody should sit, except for another woman who is on her cycle. No one could sit on the same spots that she sat on. He cannot accept food from her, right? Can't touch nothing, can't lay in the same bed, and they can't have sex. So that's showing your love for this God, is following the law. So why do Christians do it and will proclaim that Jesus got rid of those laws? Through Christ's sacrifice, the law is fulfilled. We don't have to follow the Levitical laws. But you see what you just did there, Peaceful Storm? You said to love, you agree that in order to show your love for God is to follow the law. So then you have to follow the law to show your love for God. So how do you now say that Jesus' sacrifice is the fulfillment of the law, and so now you don't have to follow the law? So how are you showing your love for God if you're not following the law? So that means I can have sex with my wife while she's on her period, even though the law says I don't have to, and that's how I show love for God. And Jesus said that we have to show love for God, is to love God. Because why do you have to follow the law that has been fulfilled? But that's the point. It hasn't been fulfilled. That's one thing. Then Jesus would be contradicting himself when he says that you have to do what the Pharisees tell you to do. Follow what they say, which is to follow the law. Then Jesus would have been lying unto himself. He was telling a lie. He was setting those people up for failure, telling them that they got to follow the law. Because that's what he told them. Now I'm still talking to you, Peaceful Stone, but there was some other comments on also. Where did I see it? Do I think the Holy Spirit is useless? Prove the Holy Spirit exists. So yes, it's useless. Your own personal being is what's useful. That's the other thing that people like to say. When Jesus told the Jews to follow the Pharisees, he had not been sacrificed yet. So why add the confusion? I'm gonna go with you for a second, even though I disagree with what you're saying. I'm gonna go with you for a second. So Jesus is telling them that, hey, you know what? Y'all need to follow the law. Pharisees telling y'all to follow the law. Y'all need to follow the law. I'm coming directly from God. I'm preaching God's word. Y'all need to follow the law. But then he's sacrificed, but he yet never tells the people that they don't have to follow the law anymore. Because when he said, we don't know what was said on the cross. Each gospel has a different variation for what was said on the cross. Some of them say it was finished. Others say, why have thou forsaken me? See, when you're in church, the pastor will say, when Jesus was on the cross, and he said, God, my God, why hast thou forsaken me? And then he bowed his head and said, it was finished. They're combining what was said, not actually referencing the fact that those are contradictory statements, that Jesus is saying multiple things on the cross depending upon the writer of the Bible, of the Testament. So how would anyone have known that they weren't supposed to follow the law anymore? Because Jesus never told them not to. The last thing they got was follow the law. It's Paul who tells you not to follow the law anymore, that you don't have to follow the law, right? That's Paul's writing. So who are you trusting? Are you trusting Paul or are you trusting Jesus? And based on your statement, I'm going to say you're trusting Paul and not Jesus. You can ask a question, of course. You don't have to ask if you can ask a question, young lady. What up, John Henry? Headed back to Virginia. I understand. I was listening to some YouTube while I was on the road myself. You say he hadn't been sacrificed, but yet he knew he was going to be. Why tell him exactly? Why tell him? I can always count on Isaac to find things that I need that I'm looking for in my brain. The one who claims I know him while not keeping his commandments is a liar, and the truth is not in this person. This Jesus always tells you to keep the law if you're following the teachings of Jesus. How you doing, Stephanie? Uh, if you paid a bill and completed the debt, would you continue to pay? Well, of course not. If you completed the debt, you wouldn't continue to pay. No, you couldn't. But that's not a good example of the Jesus sacrifice. The Jesus sacrifice would be more like you had a mortgage on your house and you live in America. Make sure you're saying you live in America. You got a mortgage on your house. You pay off your mortgage. 30 years later, you paid off the mortgage. Jesus came and paid your mortgage off. You good. Most people will say, I own my house, but you don't. Because every year you got to pay taxes on that house. So every year, so if you don't pay taxes, then you lose out on the house. So you still got some laws that you still got to follow. You still got some debt that you got to pay. Because if Jesus had paid all your debt, right, then you wouldn't be considered filthy rags. You wouldn't be considered unworthy, but your belief would have transformed you into a state of being where you now uh, don't sin anymore. You have the glorified body that allows you to perform miracles that are greater than the ones that Jesus performed. So y'all are still paying debt. You still have to ask for forgiveness. You still are sinning. You still aren't loving your neighbor as you love yourself, right? You're still not even doing that part. And of course, the Jesus paying your debt, if you are still sinning, though, if Jesus was paying your debt, Jesus would be in Badon, constantly in Sheol, not at the right hand of the Father. He couldn't be at the right hand of the Father, because then where it says sin, the Father can't be where there is sin, right? So how can he have already went to heaven if he's still taking on your debt? Because you're providing him debt right now. You know, Christians always say that they're not worthy enough, you know, that you're still going to commit sin. So you're still paying his debt. So the debt is unpaid. It's a continuous debt. It's like taxes on a house. You don't own it. Let's see. Oh, Stephanie, you just recently left Christianity. Welcome to the family. You are not alone. And that is one of the loopholes that they take, Randall, is that it's not about who said it, but it's the fact that it's there. But the problem with it being there is that it creates a contradictions. This is why, according to many biblical scholars, that and they'll teach you this in seminary, that Peter and Paul argued because Peter didn't think Paul was teaching Christianity the right way, teaching the ways of Jesus the right way, that he was Romanizing it, making it more palatable to the Gentiles by not forcing the people to follow the Jewish law. Peter was pissed off about it. And it's not a sacrifice when you know you're coming back. Yeah, not even slightly. I'm a sinner and I need grace. I perpetually go before the Father for forgiveness. But if Jesus is up there taking on your sin, that means your sin is in heaven with Jesus. But the Bible teaches you that sin cannot be where God is. See, if Jesus, I give this example quite often. If my son, who I just recently went to visit, he murdered someone, and I say, you know what, Judge, he murdered someone, but I'm gonna sacrifice my life for my son's life. I'll go to jail for my son. I go to jail for my son. 7 years for murder. But then my son murders someone else. I can't get out in 7 years, and he murders someone else, and he doesn't have to take on the 7 years. I now got to have to do another 7 years. Let's say murder gives you 7 years. So he murdered someone else. I got to do another 7 years. He murdered someone else. I was 14 years. Now I got 21 years. He murdered someone else. Now I got 28 years. He murdered someone else. Now I got 35 years. Murder someone else. And you see, my years keep adding up. I have to stay in prison as long as my son keep murdering people, because that is a sacrifice. If he murders some people, I get out in 3 years for good behavior. I get to go home and live my life, but yet he keeps murdering, but he's not being punished for it. Because I did those 3 years, he gets to continuously murder. That's what the Jesus sacrifice is like, which is not a real sacrifice. It sounds good, but it's not a real sacrifice. It makes people feel good, but it's not a real sacrifice. So I understand that's probably what you have been taught, and it's what you accept and believe. But if you critically think through it, it's not a sacrifice. You know what a real sacrifice is. You know, when you take on the debt for someone, it's a constant thing. Uh, it's kind of like when parents take on the debt of a child's credit card while they're in college. It's not when the child runs it up the first time and the parent pays it off the first time, that's it. Child keeps running up the debt, the parent got to keep paying for it. Hey, that's another good way of doing it. The parent got to keep paying for that credit card. That's taking on someone's debt. When you constantly are paying it, they are constantly using it. That's taking on their debt. Your Jesus is not constantly taking on anybody's debt. Your Jesus has been acclimated to the story of Hebrew in the Egyptian Book of the Dead. In the Egyptian Book of the Dead, Hebrew, when you come before the scales of Ma'at, and if you are found that your heart is heavier than a feather, then Hebrew comes and advocates for you. Horus, in the Greek name, comes and advocates for you. His statements are then considered by Anubis and the other 13 judges to determine whether or not Horus has made a good enough case taking on your debt for you to enter into the field of reeds. Now, you go into the field of reeds, or Amit comes and eats your heart. And you go in and you're totally destroyed. There's no hell in the Egyptian canon. You don't go to hell. You don't burn in torment. You just cease to exist. So Hebrew, that aspect of the Hebrew story is part of the Jesus story, the Jesus narrative. And you can find many other variations of savior motifs from the ancient Near East or the Mediterranean area, since they were dealing with Mediterranean people, period. But he didn't, the version of him taking on the debt and then going up into heaven, that's like one of the worst versions. The god, I don't know if Amit is a god or a goddess. I know it's the crocodile looking joker. And John Henry is making the point. The main reason why people have confusions over not keeping, and I done said it 11 times already, but the main reason is because it's not the same writers. Paul's letters are written towards the Gentiles. Luke is somewhat written towards Gentiles as well. No, Luke is written towards, John is somewhat written. No. Matthew is the most Jewish, followed up by Luke and Mark, and then John. But these different writers are writing to different audiences. So it's just like if you watch, I don't know if you've ever watched international movies, but they are made to appeal to the people of that country. It could be the same movie. Matter of fact, there are some movies that I can't think of any of that were very popular movies in America that originally started as some other movie or show in another country, but then they had to be reorganized and redone to fit America. Like a lot of some of your competition shows were originally in other countries and then have been reformatted in a different way to fit the American audience because of the different culture. So they have to make some changes. The Bible is chock full of that. All right, appreciate you, John Henry, back at the office. You say they were writing to Gentiles and who else? I'm not exactly sure I understand your question there, Jack. And it's actually Jack, y'all, Jax. I'm not calling him Jack like derogatory. But so most of the letters, there's only about 6 or 7 letters that are actually attributed to Paul. The other letters that they say are Paul's letters are written by people who are just claiming to be Paul. But most of those, if not all of those, are written towards people within the Roman Empire who are not Jewish. But the 4 Gospels are written to the Jewish people. Now, the book of Revelations is written to people who had converted over to Christianity that were living under Roman rule, because it is about Roman rule. Thank you. Like The Office was originally a British show, but then they had to change it up to make it fit the American audience. I think Mad Max was originally an Australian movie. It went over great in America, and then the next sequels were more Americanized than they were Australian, more so than the Australian style, because they went over well in America. You said Paul was writing to the Gentiles, so the others were for non-Jewish people who converted to Christianity under Roman rule. I thought that. Okay, just so I can say this clearly. So Paul was writing to convert the Gentiles. The others were writing to the Jewish people to convert them to to what would become Christianity under Roman rule. Yes. Yeah. So, and I would say Revelations is written to anybody who Jewish converts or Gentile converts who were living under the Roman rule, because Revelations is about that time frame. It is not about today. Revelations has nothing to do with us today. What's up, Chris? Peace to you. Oh, thanks for the heart. I didn't see that. Appreciate it. Appreciate it. So, yes, Paul, Jack. Paul, now, this is just based on critical thinking. I don't think Paul existed as an individual person who actually believed in what he was writing, what was being written. Paul, in my humble opinion, is an agent of Rome who was sent out to help create this passive religion, trying to create a passive version of Judaism, so that the people, the Jewish people, and the Romans would come under, the Gentiles would come under this passive religion and not revolt against the government. Because a lot of Paul's writings are for you to obey the ruler, pay your taxes, take on your suffering and be happy. That you ain't got to follow all these rules. Just, you ain't got to build statues. Just know Jesus is in your heart. If you think about it, Paul, the the writings in the four gospels are not as beneficial to government control as much as Paul's writings are beneficial to government control. Just marinate on that for a little bit. You gotta marinate on it. I just did something. Just want you to marinate on that for a second. And I did something on TikTok that I messed up. Hold on, y'all. See, this is what you get for touching stuff. I don't know what I did, but I did something. All right. Do you think you may go back to Lot this afternoon? Do you think you may go back to Lot this afternoon? What do you mean, Miss B? Like, talk about it some more. I mean, what's your do you have a question about the whole Lot shenanigans and why he shouldn't even the story doesn't even fit into any kind of good narrative? It seems to just be a plot device just to move the story along and to make it more exciting. I mean, right now we can talk about anything that you want to talk about. So if you have questions about what we was talking about a lot, then fire away. Coach, was the Jewish customs disallowing calling out their God's name? Do you think Paul used Jesus to supersede Yahweh to convert Gentiles into Christianity? So in the Jewish custom, you didn't call out the secret name of God, if that's what you mean. So that was not customary. You know, that's why you use the Yod-Heh-Vah-Heh. And the use of Yeshua, they wouldn't have been calling him Jesus. He wouldn't have been called Jesus in first century. If they were speaking Aramaic, he would have been Yahshua. If they were speaking Greek, because there is no translation for Yahshua in Greek, then it was the Ius was being used. This is why the Codex Sinaiticus uses Ius, because they cannot translate in Koine Greek Yahshua or Yahoo or Yahshua, which in English would be Joshua. And the Latin is Isus. But instead of converting the Aramaic into Joshua, the English, which is a Germanic language, instead of a Latin language, converted Ius and Isus into Jesus. No, so you do mean more about Lot. That's what I'm saying. I will, at this point, if you could ask the question, Miss Pickups, that would be better, because I've covered pretty much everything about Lot, his entire life story, earlier in the video. But if there's something more specific that you wanted to talk about, whether it's him pimping his daughters out, why the angels need to be saved, why does he? I really want to know, why would you go live in a city of the people who just conquered your ass and took away all your wealth? Think about it. Lot was living out near Sodom. They came out and conquered him, took them as prisoners, took all his wealth, After taking his wealth, instead of going to live with his uncle so he can rebuild his wealth, he pridefully goes back and idiotically goes back to the city of Sodom. And then the city gets destroyed. Makes no sense. Like, who wrote that? He's almost as dumb as Samson, right? Like Samson, I always say Samson is one of the dumbest people in the Bible. Lot is a close second. Lot is a very close second. And I am going to do some research because I'm thinking that Melchizedek might have been the king of Sodom when Sodom was destroyed. And I know they like to say he was the king of Jerusalem, but there is ample debate about Melchizedek being the son of the king of Sodom. And that is why Abraham gave him all the spoils that he had taken from Sodom. You know. What up, Chris? Arturo? See what stuff is happening again. What was considered wealth and abundance of goats and sheep, or did they have money? Combination of all that. They were more of an agrarian society back then. So the more goats and cows and sheep that you had, the wealthier you were be considered. Now, if you were into pig husbandry, you were considered poor. That was you could have had 1,000 pigs. You were on the lower scale. Even if you had some, you might even have some coinage, but society-wise, you was on the lower caste. You know, you'd be the pig farmer who comes into this high society events and they look down on you, right? But animals was the first level. Second level was land. Third level was servants. And then fourth level was coinage, right? And when I say servants, I mean servants and slaves. Those who work for you for money, those who were enslaved by you. So let me put both of them in that case. So servants and slaves. But then they did have different variations of coinage depending upon what time frame, what city states we were dealing with, because they took gold and silver and they pressed them into coinage in the same way we do today, even though it's kind of dying out. But in real life, your boy Abraham developed most of his wealth by pimping out his wife Sarah when they went to Egypt because of the famine, and I mean the drought. Him lying and saying that, just telling you my sister, even though she was his half sister, but just telling you my sister. And then when Pharaoh realized what was going on, he gave him all these goats and he gave him silver, like 50 pieces of silver or 100 pieces of silver, something like that. Gave him slaves. And then he did it again to Amalek. And he gave him all this silver and animals and slaves. So that's wealth. Let me ask you a question, Rupert. You said Melchizedek would not mess with Sodom. It was too evil. He is the king of righteousness. First thing. What did Sodom do that was so evil? Do you know? Why was this guy so up in arms against Sodom? And before you go there, I'm going to go ahead and help you out. It had nothing to do with them wanting to sodomize, as we use today, those angels, to essay those angels. Had nothing to do with that. So first, tell me what was so evil. And then I want you to go and research the name Melchizedek. The fact that his name is Melchizedek actually is more relatable to worshiping of a Canaanite deity and not the Yahweh deity. And if he wouldn't mess with Sodom, don't you think about this before you start writing. If he wouldn't mess with Sodom, why did he accept first the 10th of the spoils that Abraham got from Sodom, and then Abraham gave him all the spoils that he got from Sodom? So, and I want you to put that in the mindset of this. If you were a pastor and drug dealers came to your church, are you going to take all their drug money? When they say, I want to give you all this drug money, are you going to take the drug money? If you are a righteous pastor, let me clarify that one. If you're a righteous pastor. Right. Sometimes they didn't own the land, but remember he went and bought, Abraham does go and buy all this land from a Hittite. I believe it was a Hittite that he bought a bunch of land from, or Edomite. It was one of them he bought a bunch of land from. But yes, when it was wandering around through Canaan, sometimes they didn't own the land. But when in those days, when you didn't own land, it's just like today. If you own some land but you don't own animals, either you could do the work to roll up all the hay, or those who do own animals can pay you can pay them to bring your animals onto their land to graze. Yeah. And I'm trying to let Rupert answer before we get there, before I get there. Isaac. I've never heard this one, but the Hebrew Israelites say Melchizedek was Shem. I could answer that. I have never heard that. How do they get from Melchizedek, from Shem to Melchizedek? I've never heard that one before. That would be an interesting one. Were Canaanites similar to Romans? No. Canaanite existed before Romans ever came into being. Canaanites were originally just a little tribe of people hanging out in Levant. They were always, for the most part of their known history, they were being ruled by other people, whether it was the Akkadian Sumerians or the Assyrians or Babylonians or Egyptians. And Israelites are nothing more than Canaanites who separated from the main group of Canaanites. Now, Canaanites also have an overarching name. So you got the specific people who are called Canaanites, but all the other ites are also considered under the Canaanite banner. I understand peaceful storm. The church takes money from adulterers, tax cheats, thieves, and all the people. What's the difference? Well, the difference is when you're taking it from, and adulterers, I'm gonna separate them. Adultery is not illegal. Tax cheats, that's illegal. Thieves, that's illegal. If you are knowingly taking money from criminals, you are a criminal, right? Possession is 9/10 of the law, right, in America. So if you knowingly are taking, and I've seen this happen, where a pastor was taking the money from um, drug dealers and then got investigated for money laundering, because that's what it looks like. So if Sodom is known to be evil, and why would Melchizedek, who is supposed to be this enigmatic person who has no mother or father and all this kind of stuff that they like to say about him, even though that's just as made up as anything else, uh, why would you take the spoils from these people? So it's just like, look, I have some people in my family who they sold drugs. In my lowest points, I would have never taken money from them, because I would not want to be caught up into anything that they were doing. I don't want to look like I'm doing something that's caught up in anything they're doing. But I understand what you're saying, Peaceful Storm, but that doesn't make it right. So Canaanites are originites. or the original ites. Pretty much, they're the original ites. Yep. Phoenicians are also considered Canaanites, which it is an interesting thing how um, Phoenicians eventually left the Levant, went and set up the Carthage, basically which becomes Carthage, fought the Punic Wars, actually had one of their people become emperor of Rome. For he had three of them become emperor of Rome uh, for a little bit of time. But Romans are a collection of true Romans are just those out of Italy, but then they gave citizenship to a bunch of people. But they're way before. What is right? The measurement is used, is use. The sheep is a sheep. And the thing about it, peaceful storm, if you want to justify it that way, that's perfectly fine. Yes, I have seen drug dealers in the neighborhoods that I grew up around, uh, utilize some of their money to feed the people in the community, go into the projects, feed people, not just during the holidays, but on a regular basis. I've seen them pay people to keep their lights on. I've seen drug dealers do very useful things that are helpful to the community with their money. And back in the day, I used to applaud that. I did back in the day. I applauded it. But at the same time, I'm looking at you are also the people who are creating a lot of the problems within the community. So I would rather they go away and the community deal with itself and fix itself by other means than to take it from the drug dealer. So even if a church builds itself on the fact that it's receiving a bunch of drug dealing money and then they go out and they feed people, help people, whatever, you're going to say, well, it's how it's being used. But it's ill-gotten gains. It's still ill-gotten gains. It still doesn't work. That's where does it say Melchizedek accepted anything? Oh my gosh. Sometimes I wonder, do y'all read this book? I mean, really. Like, do you really read it? Let's go find it. And then the straw grasping. It's gonna be some straw grasping here in just a second. I'm pretty damn sure we're gonna have some grasping at straws because the only way that people can actually, the only way you can believe this book and without losing your mind. And right now I can't see if you guys are typing anything. So is you have to completely ignore certain aspects of it or create levels of it. All right, let me go back to this one. Let me do this. Let's share the screen. I don't know. I've never asked you guys if y'all can see this that well. Why didn't come up? Oh, there it is. Let's do that. Let's share it. All right. Now, what does it say? Hold on. Let me give y'all a bigger screen. Let me give you a bigger screen. I think might be able to see it better if I make it where that's the primary. All right. Y'all should be able to see that clearer. All right. we're going to look at this whole little meetup. this meetup that they have. Now, this is from Genesis 14:17 through 24. After his return from the defeat of, Chaldor Lamer, I can't say that name, I'm saying it all wrong, and the kings who were with him, the king of Sodom went out to meet him in the valley of Shaveh. That is the king's valley. The king Melchizedek of Salem brought out bread and wine. He was priest of the Most High God, of God Most High. He blessed him and said, "Blessed be Abraham by the Most High, maker of heaven and earth, and blessed be the God of the Most High, who has delivered your enemies into your hands." And Abraham gave him a tenth of everything. Abraham gave him a tenth of everything. So he took it. Then the king of Solomon, but hold on. Then the king of Solomon said, Abram, give me the persons, but take the goods for yourself. So he's like, I'll take the people, but you can have the goods. I'll take the people of Sodom that you just conquered, but you keep the goods for yourself. But Abram said to the king of Sodom, I have sworn to God Most High, maker of heaven and earth, that I will not take a thread or a sandal strap or anything that is yours, so that you might not say, I have made Abram rich. I will take nothing but what the young men have eaten and the share of the men who went with me, Aner, Eshcol, and Miriam. Let them take their share. So this is multi-pronged here. What we see is Abraham gave him a tenth of everything. He accepted it. But Melchizedek was like, well, look, just give me the people, but you can keep the goods. Abraham said, no, I can't take nothing from you, because it is yours. And what is it that he's taking? He took all the stuff from Sodom when he conquered the people. The only thing he kept is what the young men had eaten and what their share. But notice that this is one of the reasons why people say that Melchizedek was the son of the king of Sodom. Because in verse 23, that I would not take a thread or a sandal or anything that is yours, so that you may not say that I have made Abram rich. How could it have been his originally unless he was the son of the king of Sodom? I know it says king of Salem, but we do realize that there are kingships within kingships in ancient times, and even up until today, where you have a monarchy that, like the British crown, was a monarchy, but there were other kingdoms up under it, and we call those normally vassal states. So, yeah, there you go, Rupert. I hope that answers your question there, Rupert. So when you say that, where does it say that he took something? You want to go and read your book. You want to read it. And if you read it openly, if you read it without already having a predetermined landing spot, then you'll see it for what it actually is and what it actually says, not what you want it to say, right? If you truly want to understand something, don't have a landing point. And because people want Melchizedek, because it said that Jesus came in the order of Melchizedek, now they want to make Melchizedek holy. They want to make some go as far as saying that Melchizedek, that Jesus was Melchizedek, not just in the order of Melchizedek. So I don't know if you guys ever heard that before. And it's crazy to me that how Ms. Big Ups is basically breaking out the fact that these Hebrew Israelites are saying that Melchizedek is Shem. What up, Christopher? Well, I just told you where he took everything. Oh my God, see, shoestrings. He asked for the people. So he was first offered 10%. Melchizedek said, "You." It's basically saying, "Look, you conquered. You get to keep the spoils. Don't give me the spoils. You keep the spoils. Just give me the people." Abraham then said, "No, no, I can't. I have to give you everything. Every now, I can't take one sandal strap. I can't take nothing." And so Abraham gave him all of it. See what I'm saying? He gave him all of it, not just a little bit. He gave him all of it. Everything that he had acquired through his conquering of those people. The only aspects of things that weren't given back to Melchizedek was the um, was whatever his men had already consumed, and as far as their share. Now, the consensus from damn near every scholar, even your apologists, are going to say that he took that whole thing, the people and everything else that was offered. The king of Sodom said that, not Melchizedek. No, 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 no. See, one, see, you're pulling hairs here. It didn't say he took anything. It's funny how when you want something to land on your narrative, you need very specifics. But when you, uh, but when it doesn't, I mean, when you want something to land on your narrative, is when you choose whether or not you need specifics or you don't. You would like to infer. But when it doesn't go on your narrative, oh, you got to have something very specific. You can't infer nothing. But y'all infer shit all the time. And you're saying Melchizedek didn't say that. What are you talking about? This whole conversation is simply between Melchizedek and Abram. The how do you figure it's between? Let me see if I can find it real quick. Okay, hold on. Okay, so again, it says, uh, and the king Melchizedek of Salem brought out bread and wine. He a priest of the God Most High. He said, he blessed him and said, "Blessed be Abram." So who is Abram? Who is Melchizedek talking to? He's talking to Abram. Blessed be Abram by the God Most High, maker of heaven and earth. Blessed be the God Most High, who has delivered your enemies into your hands. This is Melchizedek talking to him. But okay, I see what you're saying. Then Abram gave him 1/10 of everything. Then the king of Sodom said to Abram, "Give me the person, but take for yourself." But Abram told him, so this is why you're saying that it wasn't Melchizedek, even though, okay, so 21 is a conversation with the king of Sodom. But the giving of 1/10 of everything was to Melchizedek. And it's the king of Sodom, who was saying, "Nah, just give me parts of, give me just back my people." So I stand corrected in that aspect of it. That the everything given back was to the king of Sodom, but the 1/10 was given to Melchizedek. So, and see this, you know what? I am glad that I made that mistake, because this is one thing that I found difficult to deal with when I was a Christian, is the fact that people can't admit when they make mistakes. So I mistakenly said, so just to clarify, I mistakenly said that Melchizedek received everything from the kingdom of Sodom. Melchizedek received 10%, a tenth of everything that Abram had conquered. Then the king of Sodom said, "Give me back my people, you can keep the rest of the stuff." But then everything else was given back to the king of Sodom, right? So I still stand on the ground that Melchizedek took ill-gotten gains, only 10%, but not all of it. And the rest of it was given back to the king of Sodom. Now, thank you. I am always going to be honest about anything. If I make a mistake, I don't have a problem with being wrong and corrected. Okay, see what I'm saying? He didn't take anything. The king of, he's the king of, no, see. So peaceful storm. Do you see how, you can see how I was being honest, but do you see how Rupert is being dishonest? Did we just show that Melchizedek took a tenth and king of Sodom took the rest? But Rupert is still lamenting about Melchizedek didn't take anything. Yes, he did. He took a tenth. Like, I don't see, me and Peaceful Storm, let's say Peaceful Storm came down here to our, this is a shameless plug. Let's say Peaceful Storm came down here to San Antonio for our meetup that we're having October 31st through November 2nd. Her and I can have a conversation. Her and I can walk away peacefully and be cool with each other because she recognized integrity. Rupert, I could not have that same thing with you because you cannot have integrity. You just can't have integrity. It's just said that Melchizedek took a tenth. That's what your books say. What's that dude who make all the money just by doing it? And yes, I am saying that he's taking a tenth of the ill-gotten gains. If Sodom is supposed to be so evil, you see what I'm saying? That's why. If he's supposed to be so evil. Rupert, it says that he gave Melchizedek a tenth. Now, what you're looking for is for, and Melchizedek accepted the tenth. It didn't say he denied it. So the same thought that you're doing, Rupert, where does it say he denied taking the tenth? Where does it say he denied it? Where did Abraham at least told the king of Sodom, "Nah, I can't take none of your stuff. So take your people and your stuff." You can say that Abraham didn't take anything because it clearly says that Abram denied it. You have no integrity, my guy. What do you mean Abraham gave it? Didn't say he took it. Did it say that the king of Sodom took everything, the people, including the other stuff? Or would you assume that he took everything that Abram said that he was giving to the king of Sodom? So let's see if you have any integrity there. Thank you for joining the fan club. Appreciate that on TikTok. Um, what's that? Granny Man. Let's see if you have integrity, Rupert. Let's see if you can be for real. So since it doesn't say that the king of Sodom took the people and everything that Abraham had got gained other than what his men had used, did the king of Sodom take everything back? Or did Abraham keep it? I know, right? He's filling the gap for primer. Yeah, don't speak of his name. He may show up. It's like Candyman, y'all. It's like Candyman. If you speak his name 3 times, he might show up. So let's not do that. Let's not speak his name 3 times. Um, what was it about Melchizedek that made Abraham give him up a tenth? This, so if you really want to hear some scholars debate something, I mean, there's a lot that they debate, but one of the biggest things that they debate is who in the hell was Melchizedek and why was he so special, right? That is a huge debate because there's not much information about him. That part there is pretty much the only thing about Melchizedek until you get to Jesus and him being in the line of Melchizedek. So who is Melchizedek? What was his big deal? Where did he come from? It just says he was the king of Salem. And, they trying to say, some people are trying to say that Salem was Jerusalem. They argue about that. He is the priest of the God of the Most High. There's so much debate about Melchizedek that nobody really knows other than what people have made up. Like people make up stuff in the Midrash about Melchizedek, in the Tanakh about Melchizedek, and there are many other writings about him, right? So he's an unknown character. He's kind of like Enoch. Like you got this one verbiage by him, and because you only have that one verbiage, people then created fan fiction that is the books of Enoch now, and people believe that that fan fiction is reality. Uh, some people have tried to decipher the name Melchizedek, right? Uh, and let me see if I can find that real quick about the name of Melchizedek. Because just in his name, it creates argument. Because even though people say he's the king of righteousness, because when you go back to the language back in that day, you have you can translate his name 2 ways. It can be translated as the king, as Melech, meaning king, and Sedek, Sedeq, which means righteousness, or if it's the proper name, Zedek, uh, with the addition uh, of the hierarchy, that would mean that Zedek, uh, king of, so that's the name translated, that he is the indicated as Zedek, a Canaanite deity. Zedek is a Canaanite deity, so he the king of the worshippers of the Canaanite deity that was worshipped in pre-Israelite Jerusalem. Let me clarify who Zedek was. And see, this is why there's argument about it. I can't see what y'all are saying right now. So There, right? I knew this shit. Zedek was a deity associated with the righteousness and was associated with righteousness and justice, often seen as a hypothesis or personification of the sun god Shamash role in overseeing justice, right? So to break that down for you, Jerusalem at this time frame that Abraham was running, let's say if you go with that, he was the king of Salem, and Salem was most likely the name of Jerusalem, the city that is now Jerusalem, prior to Israelite rule when it was being ruled by Canaanites. If his name is Zedek, Zedek was the Canaanite god, personification of the Canaanite god Shamash, which meant that he was the king of the city that worships Shamash, of that right, and Shamash was a righteous and just God. See, most people who are believers of other religions seem to think that any other god is evil, but in their pantheon, they had gods who was the God of justice. You see it every time you go to a courthouse with the lady blindfolded. This is a god or goddesses of justice, of everything. You had goddesses of fertility and all these other types of things. Since Melchizedek was I might do a separate video on this one now. Since he was pre-Jerusalem, pre-Israelite Jerusalem, it would have been the Canaanite god Shemesh that Melchizedek was over. So when he came in, he was saying the God of the Most High. It would have been the God in the pantheon, the Canaanite pantheon, which would have been El. Now, of course, later on, El does become the God of the Israelites, the overarching God of the Israelites, when El and Yahweh are merged together. So because Abraham was coming out of Ur, which was a Sumerian city, he could have associated El with Enlil, which is who Abraham ultimately was worshiping. So because of those connections, El, Enlil, is the same God, because many look at the fact that Enlil is the one who is pulling Abram out of the city of Ur, because the city of Ur would have been I think their primary god might have been, I have to look it up again, but I don't think their primary god was Enlil. So what makes him special is their connection to the god El and Enlil. Now, I missed some of what you guys were talking about, so let me go back. He's in one of the 70 sons of El, maybe. I don't know if Shamash is one of the 70 sons of El. Enlil is not real. Neither is your God. But see, it's disingenuous. Wait a minute, Rupert, I don't want to hear nothing else from you until you admit that. Well, you know what? I know you don't have the integrity to do so, so I'm not even going to put that out. I know you don't have the integrity to recognize that he took the stuff. It doesn't say anything. Okay, I knew he was going to do it. I knew he was going to do it. So this is why I say he lacks integrity. Now, earlier, he wanted specifics of him saying, Melchizedek saying that he took it. There's no specific that says he didn't take it. But you are inferring that Melchizedek didn't take it and that the king of Sodom got everything. You want specifics when it fits your narrative, You don't want, but when there are no specifics, you make up your narrative. That is not, that doesn't work. Hey, Texas Goddess, how you doing? That doesn't work. That's a lack of integrity, my guy. That's a lack of integrity. You know, and I'm cool with you, Rupert. You ask good questions often and everything, but I never trust that you would actually respond in a sense of integrity and honor. And then you say Enlil is real. There is as much proof of Enlil as there is as much proof of your God Yahweh. The lost books allude to Shem being the chest. I would love what which book? Which book are they supposing that? I would love to know which book. That these Hebrew Israelites are saying that Melchizedek is Shem. Yes, really, Rupert. You don't have integrity. The reason I just told you why you don't have integrity. You just went through a whole thing. Oh, it doesn't say that Melchizedek took it. Where did we're asking where does it say he took it? Even though he said he gave him a tenth. So where does it and then you claim he didn't take it? Where does it say he didn't take it? Since we're gonna be specific, where does it say he didn't take it? Like I said, I'm still gonna be cool with you, Rupert. I ain't mad at you. Don't take it that way. The Lost Book of Melchizedek. I have never heard. Have any of you guys heard of that? The Lost Book of Melchizedek. I don't think I've heard of that one. Search my memory bank. No, never heard of that one. Yeah, you. So hell, yeah, you saying that you heard that Shem was much? I've never heard. Today is my first time hearing that one. My first time. Learn something new today. That there's. I'm going to look for the Lost Book of Melchizedek. You are right, Chris. He's playing with semantics between taking and giving. If it says no spoils, he intentionally misread the verse, right? I mean, it just clearly says that Abraham. And here's the thing: there is not one. I ain't gonna say not one, but the consensus of scholarship is that Melchizedek received a tenth. You've heard it in churches over and over again about how the tenth was established by Abram when he gave Melchizedek, who Jesus is in the line of, a tenth. So therefore, you are to bring a tenth of your offering. You heard it, but how hell y'all, but you haven't seen proof. I haven't either. You say you love my program and it strengthens you. Okay. You know, I used to be a personal trainer, Rupert, and in order to strengthen my clients, we had to break down the muscle and let it be rebuilt. The beauty of muscle is that it doesn't have willpower to determine whether or not it's going to allow the amino acids in, the water, and the other elements or not. What is needed in order to rebuild, to strengthen, just comes in, does what it does. The difference when it comes to understanding or reading or believing in these books is the fact that you can reason your way one way or another and call it strength. But it's a minor thing. It's not a Melchizedek took a tenth of the bullshit he got from Sodom. And then later on, Sodom is declared to be evil. which you never told me why Sodom is evil. I asked that question. You never responded to that. I mean, Isaac put it up here for you again. That Genesis 14:20, Abraham gave 1/10 of everything. And then you got it in your Hebrews, where the Hebrews 7:1 and 2. Appreciate it, Isaac. For this Melchizedek, king of Salem, priest of God Most High, who met Abraham returning from the slaughter of the kings and blessed him, to whom also Abraham divided a 10th part of all. Now, one of the debates, and this is going to go back to Peaceful Storm. Let me tell you the part that's being debated, Peaceful Storm. So this is still up in the air in some people, in a lot of scholars' mind. When it refers to the king of Sodom said to Abram, many scholars think that that is also in reference to Melchizedek, because they believe that the king of Sodom was killed in the battle against when Abram went to battle against the Sodom. And so that's why many scholars are thinking that Melchizedek was the son of the king of Sodom. But it talks about the kings and how now in the valley of Siddim was full of bitumen pits. And as the kings of Sodom and Gomorrah fled, some fell into them, and the rest fled to the hill country. So there's arguments that are beyond my level that they are having been having concerning whether or not Melchizedek became the new king of Sodom because that was his daddy. No, Rupert, I am not doing. See, how do you see? This is what I'm saying, my guy. I asked you a simple question. What was the evil, the unrighteousness that was going on in Sodom that this guy had to go and see if it was true to determine whether or not he was going to destroy them? And your response to that is, see, you're doing the same thing you say I'm doing. Sodom was destroyed because there was none righteous in it. What was the unrighteousness? That was the question. I'm not doing what you do. I asked what was the unrighteousness. And then you said there was none righteous in it, yet the angels were dispatched there. And obviously Lot and his family must have been righteous because they were allowed to leave. So to say none, and yes, I am very, when it comes to finite words, I am very critical about finite words. None, because when they was debating and arguing, they went from like what, 50 to 40 to 30 to 20 to 10. Lot, his wife, 2 daughters, and the 2 son-in-laws. That's 6 people. So that's still less than 10. But what was the evil that they were doing that was so wrong in Sodom that your God destroyed them? And your book gives you the answer. The hill country. Yeah, I rode through Texas hill country. Right. I didn't even read all of what Isaac's saying, but I know he's on point. Being righteous doesn't mean that you got all these morals and virtues. What it really means is that you are a person who would, if you did sin, you would sacrifice some animals. You would follow the law as best you can, and anytime you didn't follow the law, you would then sacrifice some animals or some wheat or some pour out some libations. You follow the commandments pretty much perfectly. This is why Zechariah was called righteous. Abraham, Daniel, Job, Lot considered to be righteous, but they all had these effed up ways about them, which is Lot offering his virgin daughters to be gang banged unwillingly by the people in order to protect some angels who had the power to blind everybody. I'm sorry, but if some angels came into my house and was like, and there's some people pressing up against talking this trash about we gotta get, I'd be like, dude, y'all angels, y'all need to handle this. Y'all got power. If y'all don't, then what the hell am I worshiping this God for? If his main agents ain't got no grip, you ain't got no swag about you. Nah, you going somewhere. Exactly. I'm asking you because I want to know if you know. You claim that they were unrighteous, that there was no righteous people there. That they were evil. I want to know if you know what is the evil that your God is calling evil. By obfuscating like that, you're just telling me you don't know the answer. I mean, if you don't know the answer, just say you don't know. You've just been told that they were evil and that none were found to be righteous in the city. Not, well, at least 10 people weren't righteous, because you got to be specific. It's at least 10. They didn't have 10 righteous people. So if you don't know, just say, I don't know. That's perfectly fine. That's when you can say you don't know, that actually is the road to knowledge and wisdom, is to say, I don't know. Or if you make a mistake, let me correct myself. Oh, thank you for the lightning bolt, Miss Fifi. Thank you. But that's the true mark of maturity as well, to say, I don't know. Like I can tell you, there's more things that I don't know than there are things that I do know. And hell, there's more things I've forgotten than I still know, to be honest. So if you don't know what the reason he wanted to destroy it, Sodom, just say so. It's cool. Sodom and Gomorrah. And then I'll tell you. Even though I did a video about it. When did I do that? Video about it last week? Well, over the last 10 days. See, Rupert, this is why we would have problems. You know, coach, you can't just say I don't know or tell or say the answer. And people wonder why I don't bother with debates. It's because that type of mentality. So without further ado, I'll just go ahead and explain it, because I ain't got time to be dealing with this nonsense, going back and forth, trying to get this man to shut down his pride and just say either I don't know or give an answer, but he's too afraid of being wrong that he don't want to give an answer. So the reason why Sodom and Gomorrah, the true reason why they were considered to be evil, is because of the outcry from the Israelite people who were living in Sodom and Gomorrah, who were not being shown hospitality. They were not being given. Okay, thank you. I read it, but I don't remember. I can go back and look. He could have said that 11 lines ago instead of going back and forth with the other stuff. So what you will read when you go back is realize that they weren't being hospitable to the Israelites or the Hebrew people who had moved in them. And mainly this would be Lot and his crew of people who had moved into the city of Sodom and Gomorrah, because those would have been the only people given the outcry. So because they weren't giving them land, sharing in their spoils, giving them, some of their wealth. The people there were whining about not getting their wealth. They were being treated the same way America treats illegal immigrants, or let me be clear. immigrants of who are brown. So they were being inhospitable. That was the big evil. That was the big evil that this God said, I want to destroy this town. And recognize the idea to destroy it was already made before the angels came in there. But the angels then had to go check to verify that they were acting that way. So which means this God didn't know for 100% and for certain that this was going on. So he does not show omniscience in this instance because he had to verify it. And then once the angels are there, because traditionally in those time frames, when someone entered a city and you were a stranger, you first go pay homage to whoever the leaders of that city is. And if you do that, you find you good, you ain't got no problems. You know, they're gonna tax you. You know, taxing people was big. They're gonna tax you, and then you go and you do your business in that city. Now these two angels didn't do that. So because they didn't, now they want to go and they want to essay these angels. You get a repeat of this story in Judges because the man came into the city and he didn't show any proper respect. You get this said when Jesus is supposed to come down and people gonna meet him in the sky and escort him into to earth, is because they would send escorts. If a powerful person was coming to your town, then you send somebody outside your town to escort them into town to let everybody know everything's cool, right? That was the mindset. We can't think about how we think about things today. Me and my brother rode to Spokane. I ain't have to go see the mayor of Spokane and say, hey, I'm here. We just roll up in there now. But back then you couldn't do that. You couldn't just roll up. You couldn't just roll up in somebody's town. Well, yes, you're right, Perfect Storm. They weren't technically being called Hebrews or Israelites at that time frame, but they were the ones that Abraham and the people who were with Abraham had been selected as this God, as Yahweh's chosen people. I hate using that term chosen people because it creates that mentality is why they're over there doing what they're doing in Palestine. But to be correct, to be 100% correct, yes, God's chosen people who would later become Hebrews and Israelites are the ones who were doing the crying out. So that is the correct way of saying it. They were the selected ones of God for their purpose. That actually even better way. They were selected for God's by this God for that purpose. Over on Miss Fifi is saying that you can't, in some African towns, you can't do that. That you can't roll up into their cities without checking in with the people who run it. Hell, I know in Nigeria, the motherfucker want to bribe for everything. I mean, I was like, dude, I'm going to the embassy. You got to back off me. I'm on military orders. But they want to bribe. Oh, you talking to somebody else. So do you know the Bible? Do you have to know the Bible to become a Freemason? No, you just have to believe in any God. You can be a Muslim and be a Mason. You can be any religion and be a Mason other than Satanism. Oh yeah, did they? Yes, checking in. That wasn't something that just lasted during that time frame. Even in the Roman era, you came to a new city, you had to check in. Checking in has been a big thing. One for taxation, the other reason to make sure that spies and other people weren't coming into your city uh, to destroy your city or to create issues. Okay, Fender 97 said Ezekiel says the sin of Sodom were morally disgusting. They wanted to essay two angels. let's see if I can remember the exact verse, the exact placement of that in Ezekiel. Now, Ezekiel, of course, is writing, Ezekiel 18 would still be during the Babylonian, uh, when it was under Babylonian control. And recognize that Ezekiel is writing this because he's lamenting about what's going to happen to the Babylonians because they have captured and taken over the people. I could swear it's Ezekiel 18. It's either 18 or is it 14? Isaac could probably find it faster than I will. Sometimes I can't stand him, but I appreciate him. And, well, I don't think it's 18 because I don't see it. So is it 14? What did I do? Oh, my number lock is off. Let me go ahead and check, make sure Isaac ain't posted it up for me. Can't find the page that you're on. Oh, you're saying it's Ezekiel 16? Fender? Let's go look. Let's go take a peek here. If my computer would stop posting up all these god dang on ads. I think my computer is about to die on me in the next few months. I might have to get me a new one. Oh yeah, it is 16 because it talks. I remember talking about the origin, how your origins and your birth is the land of Canaan. Actually, Ezekiel 16, I did a video about this. Ezekiel 16 got some stuff in it, and it's very metaphoric and comparing them to other people and how. Okay, so let me put this on the screen because I know how some people are. Let me put this on the screen. And let's put it on the screen. So Ezekiel 16. Now I'm gonna go back over here where I can see it clearly. Now you can't just read 50. 50 says that they were haughty and did abominable things before me. Therefore I removed them when I saw it. All right. So it's not specifically saying what those abominable things are. You are inferring that it is dealing with them wanting to essay those two angels, right? But you got to start more up around verse 44, where it says, "See, everyone who uses proverbs will use this proverb about you, like mother, like daughter. You are the daughter of your mother, who loathe her husband and her children. You are the sister of your sisters, who loathe their husband and their children. Your mother was a Hittite, and your father an Amorite." He's talking about the children of Israel, and he's saying that those are their parents. Your big sister is Samaria, who lived with her daughters to the north of you. Your little sister, who lived to the south of you, is Sodom and her daughters. So it's saying that they are all family members, and they are, and this is how they're acting. You not only follow their ways, the Israelites, talking about the Israelite people under Babylonian captivity, you not only follow their ways and accepted and acted according to their abominations, within the very little time you were more corrupt than they in all your ways. So it's saying that they were more corrupt, the Israelites, than the people of Sodom, than the Amorites, than the Hittites, and more so than the Samaritans. As I live, says the Lord, your sister Sodom, this is where it gets important. Your sister Sodom and your daughters have not done as you and your daughters have done. This was the guilt of your sister Sodom. She and her daughters had pride, excess of food, and prosperous ease, but did not aid the poor and needy. They were haughty and did abominable things before me. So the primary issue here that is spelled out is that they had pride, excess of food, and prosperous ease, but did not aid the poor and needy. As far as the abominable things, just not worshiping this God is considered an abominable thing. Just not worshiping other gods, because Sodom would have been worshiping a different God. That is an abominable thing. So to infer that the desire to essay those angels because they didn't check in when they came to the city was the abominable thing, is taking the evangelical rhetoric that promotes against the LGBTQ community. Now they can find other verses for that, but that's not one of them, because that wasn't the great sin of Sodom. The sin of Sodom was that they had wealth and they wouldn't help and share it with the people. And who, think about Lot and his people's situation by the time they moved to Sodom. They had goats, cows, animals, they had all this stuff. They got conquered by Sodom, now by the people of Sodom. Now they got to go live in the city. He don't have his wealth anymore. So they would be, him and his crew are part of the poor. But they were so haughty, prideful, bunch of food, wouldn't share it. And so now they're unrighteous and abominable things, worshiping other gods could have been the abominable thing. We don't know what the abominable thing is, but we know that based on this God and what he writes, just the worship of another God is an abominable thing. Doing animal sacrifices to other gods. Now the animal sacrifice done to him, cool. The ones to other gods, abominable. So it could be a great number of things. But it says that, but Ezekiel was talking about how the Israelites were doing worse than the people of Sodom. Now, it does, as you continue to read that one, talks about how the people of Samaria wasn't doing nowhere near as bad as any of the rest of them jokers. And that's, and he says that Sodom and Samaria, they will be redeemed, right? And I have to ask the question, when were they ever redeemed? Let me see where it says exactly. In 53, I will restore their fortunes, the fortunes of Sodom and her daughters, and the fortunes of Samaria and her daughters. And I will restore you your own fortunes along with theirs, in order that you may bear your disgrace and be ashamed of all that you have done, becoming a consolation of them. As for your sister Sodom and her daughters shall return to their former states. Samaria and her daughters shall return to their former states, and you and your daughters shall return to your former states. Was not your sister Sodom a byword of your mouth in the day of your pride, before your wickedness and was uncovered? So this God is going to restore Sodom and Samaria to their former states. Make it make sense. No. Look, the best part of a cigar is that last third until it get too hot to smoke it. How you doing, outrageous atheist? What's up? So before the angels came to investigate to see if they weren't sharing their good fortune with the poor, they had already been doing things that this God didn't like. And that was the thing that they didn't like: the pride, the haughtiness, the non-sharing, the not helping the poor. Kind of like how America does people. Oh, this is the God of Israel is the one that's restoring Sodom and restoring Samaria. Because he says, I will. This is Ezekiel speaking for God. And he's saying, and this is the God of is Yahweh saying, I will restore them. Yeah, so this is that God restoring them. This is not a different God restoring them. This is that one. Even though this Bible does speak of different gods having powers, like Shamash. If they were making, why is this smaller on here now when I'm looking at it? They said if they were making animal sacrifices to other gods, who were the other gods? If the other gods was El Elyon, would it have been an issue? At that time frame, it would have been an issue because the Yahweh and El, it goes back and forth because there is no univocality within this book, because you got different writers writing at different times. It is well established that they were worshiping, that the time frame of Abraham, the worship would have been geared towards Yahweh, right? The storm deity Yahweh. Uh, as the uh, After the whole Exodus story and the Joshua story, things starts to get mixed up, you know, as far as and Elyon, well, El and Yahweh. But it's really not until you get to, and this has nothing to do with the story itself, but it's not until you get to the edits that are done between Hezekiah and Josiah from around 722 down to around 680, that during that time frame between Hezekiah and Josiah is when the what we call the Old Testament went through major edits, and they got rid of worshiping. That's when Yahweh and El got merged together as one deity, and they got rid of El's consort, which his wife Asherah. So that was more of a political move at that time frame than following the story, if that makes any sense. But who was the God of Sodom during the time of Abraham is a interesting question. Gotta have the quality of the question determines the quality of the answer. As far as the Bible is concerned, it doesn't say, of course. I knew that part. If we can figure out what the actual people during that time frame, that would give us a clue. And I mean historically. Um, if we can, if there is any artifacts that were around, what time that would have been? What Abraham is like in the 2000s, somewhere around in the 2000s BCE. No, it's just after the flood. So the flood is around 27. So he's about 2500 BCE. That study might have taken me a little bit longer than I want to take right now. as far as figuring out who were the people. One quick thing popped up, said possibly the Elamite people, but I would need to go and read more about that to really see if it was the Elamites. I have to get back to you on that one. But it was more than likely would have been somebody in the Canaanite pantheon, though. Most likely. Either somebody in the Canaanite pantheon, which also has its equivalencies to the Sumerian Akkadian pantheon. What are y'all talking? Man, y'all crazy. Look, that's something that I always found hilarious. If you call someone a Nimrod right now, you're calling them, an idiot, calling them dumb. The whole idea of the name Nimrod going from being a mighty hunter to being an idiot happened because of Bugs Bunny. Like I've used that before to demonstrate how we change the meanings of words change over time. And people allow for Nimrod to be changed by a goddamn cartoon. And that's pretty damn sad. That is pretty sad that we would allow for such to be. That a cartoon could change our perspective on a word. And that, here's the funny part, Christians, people who believe in the Bible, I should say, won't even recognize that when they call somebody a Nimrod, and then they relate it to the Bible, Nimrod, they actually think that Nimrod was a king, but he was an idiot. They're basing it on a cartoon. It just means mighty hunter. And then the question has to be, did Nimrod mean mighty hunter before, or did it become known as mighty hunter after the person named Nimrod demonstrated that he was a mighty hunter, and then that's when Nimrod became a mighty hunter? Because all these naming conventions that they have in the Bible, it is more like logical that somebody would name, that you would get a name, and then because you did something, then your name came to that meaning, not the other way around. Because the likelihood of these people perfectly naming their children is bullshit. I tried to perfectly name my children, it didn't work. See, now Fender, here's the point. Fender, this is what you have to recognize when you are looking at this. Now you're saying Jude 1:7 talks about how they were giving over them into similar manner of these having given themselves over to sexual immorality and going after strange flesh. Now, you have to ask the question, when was Jude written? Was Jude written before Genesis or after Genesis? Because, and I'm going to go ahead and answer it, Jude is written way, thousands of years after this Genesis story is being told. So now I'm Jude and I'm telling this story, but I have the knowledge when I'm writing Jude that they tried to essay the angels. So now I'm going to focus on that part and make that as part of their original sin. But that's writing it with the knowledge of how something has happened. It's kind of like, when you're watching a movie and I'm going to be a little bit racist, okay? I'm going to be a little bit racist, y'all. Hold on, be a little bit racist. You know how you go watch a movie in a black movie theater back in the day, and you're watching a horror movie, and people yelling at the screen, "Girl, don't go in there. He hiding in the closet. Don't go in there. He gonna kill you." The person watching the movie yelling at the girl, telling her, "Don't go in there," is doing it because they already have the knowledge that the person is in the room waiting to kill them. But for the person in the movie, the character doesn't know that. So when we say, oh man, these people stupid, they don't know that there's somebody in there, right? But folks be yelling at the screen all the time because you know, you can see it. You have foreknowledge, right? So you expect the character to act like how you would act. So when Jude is writing this, he has the information already. And so when he writes, of course, he's writing to say it that way. That doesn't make Jude true about what the actual sin that they was committing, that what this God had determined was the unrighteousness, what was the abomination. Jude is basing it solely on what happened after the decision had been made to kill all those people, even the babies who lived in Sodom. I'm sure there were some babies. So I wouldn't take Jude saying that as that's the correct thing that was happening in the city. Even taking Ezekiel is a stretch because Ezekiel is writing this at least 1,000 years plus after the situation had gone on. To be perfectly honest, we have, excuse me, we have zero idea as to what was the unrighteousness that was going on. Most likely, the unrighteous, Ezekiel was probably right as far as the not sharing and treating them like outcasts. Because if you look at the situation of they came out, they kicked Lot's ass and took his stuff, but then Abraham came back and kicked their butt and took the stuff back and then gave it back to them. So they probably looked at Lot like, yo, punk, it's your fault that we got our butt whooped. You know how people like to pass the blame and not look and take accountability for themselves. We see that all the time where shit. I rode riding with my brother to Spokane. We rode a lot of state roads and we rode through some poor ass neighborhoods, right? Just impoverished. Well, towns. I ain't gonna say neighborhoods, but towns. And one thing that we saw a lot of, and I'm not trying to be political, but a whole bunch of Trump flags and Trump signs, right? And then when you look at it, what did he do to get a lot of these rural people to vote for him? He told them that the Mexicans are coming to steal your jobs. He told them, I'm gonna build a wall, close the border. He told them all kind of things, scapegoating another group of people, another group of immigrants, in order to get those people to vote. Now, when I drove through some of these towns, even in Texas, Oklahoma, Colorado, Wyoming, Montana, I ain't see a lot of Spanish people. In Spokane, almost all the homeless people that we saw, I only saw one person who was homeless that was not white. All of them were white who were homeless. Who's this? But those people will sit up there and scapegoat another group that don't even live in their town that much. Ain't even a few of them in there. So human nature would be for the people of Sodom that when they got all their stuff back from Abraham to still persecute or be angry at Lot and his folk. That's just human nature. You're right, Fender. It said that they had committed abominations, but it doesn't say what those abominations are. It doesn't express that those abominations were sexual immoralities. And as I said before, Fender, an abomination, what is an abomination to this God? Is sacrificing other animals to other gods an abomination to this God? Is eating the sacrifice of animals by the non-priesthood an abomination to this God? There are a lot of things that are abomination to this God, but because the evangelicals have focused this so much, and not just evangelicals, let me just say that, but the Catholic Church, when it's in its inception, did the same thing. But a lot of the focus have been on what they were trying to do to the two angels, but they were determined to be an abomination before that. Before that happened, we said the correct answer is we don't know. When Ezekiel says that, we don't know. when we don't know what it is. It could be a myriad of things. And when this God says it in Genesis, which is the original time he's saying it, but did not specify, we don't know. And the only thing you can do is look at the character of this God and what else he has said is an abomination. And that's about it. Anything else, we're putting our own modern day spins on it, just as Ezekiel put his modern day spin on it, just as Jude put his modern day spin on it. But the only thing that but it's interesting, didn't list out any sexual immorality, but sure as hell listed out that they had money and they had food and they had wealth, and they did not share it or take care of the poor. But didn't spell out any kind of sexual thing. Didn't spell out anything else. It's in the same way. He killed Why? We don't know. We don't know what was doing that was so bad. We can speculate all day, but we have no idea. We know exactly why he killed Onan, though. He had that pullout game and was, jizzing on the floor. We know exactly why. But he didn't tell us why he killed He just said was so wicked. Now, people have made up all kinds of things as to what was his wickedness. Paul said he had a thorn in his side. Do you know that people have went as far as to say that Paul's thorn in his side, because he was walking around with Timothy all the time, that it was homosexuality? Other people have said that Paul's thorn in his side was some type of gluttony. Some have said that Paul's thorn was pride. So people have made up what fits a narrative that they like for many characters. And just like the books of Enoch are completely made up because people wanted to know more about this Enoch guy. And that's a level where people don't want to accept who are believers in this book, is that there are aspects of it that the real answer is you don't know, and that that you are following doctrine and not what the book actually says. So, yeah. That's the thing. And so when people say, "Oh, you left because your church hurt," no, I wasn't church hurt at all. I studied it, but I studied it without a landing point. I studied to say, okay, what is it actually telling me? What is it actually saying? Not what I want it to say, not what the preacher has said that it says, but what does it actually say? And then let's break down the politics at the time frame. Let's break down the culture at the time frame, because what they thought is what it actually says based on their culture. It doesn't have anything to do with our modern day culture. Right. So, but I've been on here for 2 hours and 57 minutes. I got some other work to do. I got an errand to run. I appreciate you guys. Y'all have been great. Hey, we need, let's see. So each night is 292, 2, 4, 6. Look, we're having our meetup here in San Antonio, October 31st through November 2nd. I look for you guys to be here. We need a few more people in order to keep the rate. So if you are waiting to reserve, and all these reservations have to be in by September 29th. If you are still waiting, but you know you're coming, go ahead and reserve. That way the contract will be fulfilled and everybody will still get the discounts and the free breakfast and free dinner who've already signed up, who've already reserved their room. So I need y'all to at least make the reservations. Okay? All right? So actually we need 2 more reservations. 2 more reservations, actually. So I need y'all to make y'all reservations. All right? And I told y'all, Prima is like Candyman. Y'all said his name twice, so he came twice and he showed up. But we getting ready to get off, so yay us. But so sign up for that. We got that coming. And then on August 18th, I'm doing a webinar. You can go to the link in the description on Facebook and YouTube. And so Cheryl, I know this is a pain in the butt, but I can't put links on TikTok. If you go to my YouTube page at CoachMens33, at Coach Renz 33. There's the link, and go to one of the lives and click on descriptions. You'll see the link for the Jewelry Plaza downtown San Antonio uh, Free Thinkers group, or you can just call them and say, I want to reserve with the Free Thinkers group for October 31st through the 2nd. So the Jewelry Plaza Hotel, there's two hotel juries downtown at San Antonio, but Jewelry Plaza Hotel near Riverwalk, and you'll see it there. Uh, but we're meeting, we're gonna have fun, we're gonna have great conversation, but mostly we're gonna have fun. So I look forward to seeing you guys there. I look forward to seeing those who are going to participate in our webinar on August 18th. The link is also in the description on Facebook and YouTube for the last few lives. The Exodus, the greatest lie ever told, is what we're talking about on that one. So continue to subscribe, share the videos. Many people on Facebook are saying that they have not been seeing the videos. I've had people say they haven't seen the video in a year or two. I think that Facebook is doing the shadow banning thing, and I don't know how to fix it. If anybody knows how to fix that, let me know, because I have tried a whole bunch of stuff, to try to fix it. But I have no idea how to fix a shadow ban. Uh, so yeah, you're saying the description but that description is based on having knowledge of that the Abraham didn't have, that the writer of Genesis didn't have. So I'm going strictly on what was Genesis. We really don't know what the issue was in Sodom that this guy had a problem with. You really can't say it. Ezekiel wrote what he thought, Jude wrote what they thought, but you don't really know because Genesis doesn't tell you, right? But we'll be back here tomorrow, 12 noon Eastern Standard Time. Of course, I'm in Central Time, so that's 11 o'clock Central, 10 o'clock Mountain, 9 o'clock Pacific. And for my people who are in other countries, I'm not doing the math, whatever that time is in your country. I appreciate everyone. Like, share, and subscribe. Always remember, you have to free yourself to be yourself because your greatness is non-negotiable. Good journey, good vibration, and I'm hungry. Time for lunch. It's lunchtime, and I gotta run an errand.